Julia Hassall, welcome to In the Naad.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy we made it work. It was challenging, but you got here.
I did. It's the end of the year, and I'm finding we don't have this in Australia, but this very interesting period between the Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is absolutely nuts. So
You're talking about traffic and chaos, and
traffic, and everybody getting ready for the end of the year. So
plus the retrograde and the full moon last night. There's energy is wild right now.
The energy is a lot.
Energy is really a lot. It's all about manageability, and it's been overwhelming.
It has been overwhelming. But
so your job is going to kick in right now, right?
Thank
you must be getting lots of calls.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really busy time at the moment, and I'm really excited because I am doing a lot of work to get a message out on a bigger scale, and moving from more one-on-one stuff to educating people to find ways to empower themselves.
Well, let's tell the audience what you do. You're a trauma therapist. You're a somatic healer. You work in brain spotting. What else? There's a whole litany of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm an integrative trauma therapist, and basically I actually started studying the nervous system and neuroscience and energy. And then I went into studying my Master's of Clinical Psychology. So I have a background in neuroscience, and then I did my Master's in a very holistic type of psychotherapy. But in saying that, I wouldn't call myself a traditional therapist, because I do find that therapy, while it can be helpful, can be a little one-dimensional. So I really look at people in a holistic way, where we have to look at the body, the mind, and the spirit, which, as you know, is typical of most different lineages and cultures that have really taken into account people in a way that we're not just looking at one aspect of them. We're considering, all parts of us, including, our spiritual self, which I think modern psychology has really forgotten about. So
I absolutely agree with you. The good news is it seems like more people are making that change into holistic medicine.
Definitely. I think there's been like a bit of an impasse, and a lot of people have kind of got to a point with therapy where they're realizing that just talking is not making change. And there's definitely more, discourse and dialogue about the fact that we really need to be working with the body. And also we need to be working with energy. And, I feel like energy still, maybe not so much to the listeners of your podcast, but energy can still be seen as such a woo or an alternative thing. When energy is
in the greater population, you mean?
Yeah,
really?
In the greater population. And I think now people are starting to understand we really need to be working with our energy in both a grounded way, so both internally in our bodies, and also working with energy outside of ourselves.
So why do you think that people are so reluctant to jump on that bandwagon? Is it because they're not sensitized to feeling shifts in their own energetic path? Like, for example, I feel my energy shift throughout the day, so I know how valuable energy is. In order to deny that, you would have to not be aware of the shifts in your body, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. And I think that a lot of people are very disconnected from their bodies, right?
Wow.
I think that it's interesting what I see in spiritual spaces and people that are more attuned is that there is a sensitivity to a lot of these people. A lot of these people are empathic and they feel their bodies more. A lot of people that came into a spiritual space may have had really difficult lives and have taken a path where they're looking at, different things, and some of them may be disconnected to their bodies, but people often that have had, challenging lives, they actually might be more sensitive to energy or more hypervigilant. So they're feeling into that. Sometimes people don't know what to do with that.
And they may not even be able to identify it.
They might not be able to identify it as well. For example, actually, I'll share that previously I used to be a lawyer, and, I had no idea how sensitive I was until my early 30s. And to give you some context, I'm 38 now. But, I had told myself I was logical and factual and, not emotional, not intuitive. And I'm at the extreme other end, right?
Right.
So, sometimes the path takes us a little while to work
For
that
sure.
out.
They say that like a lot of these A-type personalities or people that are in the workplace and, very, I don't know what is the word I'm looking for. I guess just very A-type, aggressive, work-focused. Their brain and their heart are disconnected from the vagus nerve. So that they're so tight in here that there's no symbiosis. And so that, in fact, creates a cutoff where they're cut off from their heart center. And that makes sense to me.
That's a really interesting point that you make, because the vagus nerve is the most important nerve in the body. And that's really the central connector in our nervous system,
yeah.
right? And it's really interesting. I would say that together with the trauma work I've done, the most powerful thing that's really helped me is chanting. And chanting is directly working on that nerve. And I remember I would go to healers for so many years, and they were like, your vagus nerve is, completely shot. You really, really need to work on this and tone it and strengthen it. So I do think more people coming into awareness of that, creating that sense of engagement with their bodies and actually realizing their sensitivity and then tuning into it and noticing how they feel about energy, noticing how they feel when they're with somebody, noticing how they feel inside and why they might be having that energetic response to someone or something. I think that's something that we're becoming more aware of, but not everybody has got there, or they might be on that path.
All right. Well, especially with chanting, for example. I mean, that's a frequency.
That is a
So
frequency.
that's a frequency healing. And that's a big part of my practice. I'm a Kundalini. And that's actually how we met, through Gyan Rondev.
Yeah.
I love him so much.
He's so fantastic.
He's so fantastic. So, right, that's our practice. So, meditation, chanting is one of the 4 pillars.
Yes.
So what I'd like to get into with you today, let's do a deep dive on 3 topics, if that works for you.
That works great.
I'd love to get into brain spotting, because I'd never heard of it until we spoke.
Okay, yes.
I'd like to get into shadow work, because it's something that you hear about all the time. And I don't think it's really clear what it is. To say it's the shadow side of yourself, or it's the part you don't want people to see. I want to talk about the nitty gritty. When does it develop? How do we work with it? I want to dig deep into that, and then I'd also like to get into sleep, because so many people are going through periods of sleep deprivation and anxiety. And I'd really like to help those people get some understanding of how to manage it, because it's not a quick fix.
No.
Working with sleep is not a quick fix. So let's dive in. Let's start with, what is brain spotting?
Okay. Well, I love this topic and I'm very passionate about it. So brain spotting is a more evolved form of EMDR. So if you've heard of EMDR.
Yes, of course I have.
Now, EMDR, I believe, has been around for about 40 or 50 years. And
it's biofeedback, am I correct?
No, EMDR is eye movement reprocessing. I forgot the other letter, but I'll remember it in just a second. But basically, the idea is that we're reprocessing trauma in the brain. So what happens when we have trauma? Trauma is any experience that overwhelms the nervous system and that we are not able to process or metabolize. So if you have an experience that overwhelms you, it can cause a stuckness within you, right? Now, every night when we go to bed, we process our memories. So we process our memories, we process our day. But if we've had something that's...
You mean like a computer download?
It's just like a storing of, just think of like a file management or a memory management
Yeah, it's like
system.
a computer download kind of.
Yeah.
Putting it into various files. So
We're
that's
putting it
that
into
day's
files,
file.
and we're putting it away, right? So that happens when we go into REM sleep. Sleep is what we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But now if we've had an experience that was overwhelming, or we're experiencing a lot of stress, that filing system kind of gets stuck. So in brain spotting or EMDR, what we're actually doing is we're using the eyes, the visual field, to actually get into a spot in the brain and to unlock that trauma or unlock that stuckness that hasn't been able to be filed in REM sleep. So,
So would you categorize it as emotional overload?
I would categorize it as trauma as emotional overload. Yes, emotional overload, but something that's actually occurring in the body that we're not able to process through.
Physically processed. So it's like
Physically or somatically processed, which
like in your fascia, or it becomes a part of your DNA, and the only way to get rid of it is to literally release it.
exactly. So, when we experience something that's overwhelming for us, if we are able to self-soothe or feel like we have support in that moment, we are able to process it more easily, right? And come back to a baseline. If we have trauma, often we have difficulty coming back to a baseline, right? So we might be here instead of being down here. So what we're wanting to do is aim to reprocess that trauma and come back down to a baseline that allows our body to relax. Because often you'll find if people have unprocessed trauma, we're living in sympathetic arousal, which is that nervous system state, which is a heightened state. And I think many of us know what that feels like, that feeling like we're not able to relax or not able to sleep, or, we're getting
heart palpitations.
We're getting triggered easily. So we have a lot of physical or somatic experiences from that, right? And, I think the powerful and amazing thing about EMDR and brain spotting is that it allows you to actually get into the brain. So when I talk about the brain and the body, they're not separate, right? Because the brain controls your nervous system.
Of course.
Your nervous system is in your body, and it is directing everything you do. It's directing,
But you've got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic.
And your nervous system controls your emotions, your behaviors, your interactions with people, your energy, So,
Of course.
So what we're doing is really unlocking something in the nervous system and the brain to allow there to be more flow and ease in the nervous system.
I remember when I did it, I put on headphones, and they put me in front of a screen. Is that how the brain spotting works?
No. So, and that may have been the biofeedback that you're thinking of.
Are they
more.
two separate things?
There's neurofeedback and biofeedback as well. So EMDR typically they will wave something in front of your eyes. So you're going to be looking left and right. And that actually helps you to access, in that case, a REM-like state. So if you've gone to bed and, you're familiar with when the eyes move like that, that's actually a processing state, right? So what EMDR does is it's creating almost like a reenactment of that to allow for that processing. Now, brain spotting is something that I actually prefer. It's really at the head of the game, and it's less known, but it's becoming more popular. So brain spotting was actually born from EMDR, and it's a similar thing. You actually find an eye position and you unlock something with someone. Now, I recently trained in an advanced a course on brain spotting the other day, and there were people rolling around on the floor and convulsing. And that's because these trauma parcels that we describe them are so deep in the brain. These are really primal areas of the brain that are controlling movement and somatics. So people were actually unlocking that trauma. And,
The release is overbearing on the body.
Well, it's not necessarily overbearing. And that's the interesting thing, because I think a lot in therapy and things like that, we talk about re-traumatization. But actually, in order to heal, you have to get in contact with the trauma.
Of course.
In a way that is safe and contained, and with somebody that can hold you through that process.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, and we were talking about this when we were discussing sleep, how my sleep issues won't resolve until the underlying problem resolves. Yeah, and hitting that's like getting to the root of it. And it's, of course, it's really hard on the body. It's hard emotionally. And once you sometimes unlock these locks, you feel an enormous surge and then a release. Sometimes it takes days to recover from that.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that you brought that up, because I do think underlying sleep is a lot of, dysregulation, and sometimes I've in the past had a lot of sleep issues as well, and I can feel something there, but I'm not sure what it is sometimes, right? And it's like a motor going of something that I haven't touched. And I've been thankful to do a lot of this work, and it's really, really changed my life and changed lives of my clients. And I'm really passionate about spreading the word, because I don't see that traditional talk therapy in the way that it's going is really getting deep enough in these layers to help people to process their trauma.
So your modalities are actually methods to go deep without talk therapy. They're alternatives to psychedelics or alternatives to talk therapy.
Definitely. And
it's very hard to reach that space. Most people can't even navigate emotionally to get there.
Well, yeah, that's the beautiful thing about, EMDR, but especially brain spotting, is you are getting people into a state and you'll see them drop in, and we don't even talk a lot of the time.
Sounds like a hack.
Sometimes it's
a hack.
It's pretty incredible. And what's happening is there's also, if I'm working with someone, I am watching their body very carefully. And sometimes they'll be burping or yawning, or
So they're purging.
They will be purging, or they might be having autonomic responses, because it's the autonomic nervous system that's having these these processing experiences to allow it to come out. And what's really important is that you are sitting with somebody that is just holding space, because a lot of the healing actually happens by being witnessed and by having a stable nervous system watching you go through that, watching you process that, and almost like being like a tuning fork for you, right?
That makes total sense.
So just holding that space and being witnessed, and, I'm watching very, very carefully, even though I'm not speaking all of the time. I am seeing what is going on, and I'm allowing this natural process that's in the body to unfold.
That sounds to me so much more powerful than verbal communication at that moment.
100%. In fact, we have an acronym which is WAIT. Why are you talking? I think I forgot the I.
Why?
I will remember it in a second. But it's important that we are not interrupting such a critical process, because our body is so intelligent. It is so intelligent, and we have to allow it to do whatever it needs to do.
So does it work for depression? What is it? What is the brain spotting work for specifically?
Anything. That's what I also do love about it versus EMDR. So EMDR is often the way that you set up EMDR is that you're thinking of a specific memory, a traumatic memory, and then you work with that in quite a formulaic way. Whereas brain spotting, we're working with the body. So sometimes we might get you to talk about an issue, and once we go in there, we find a spot in the body that is feeling overwhelmed by that, and we start unlocking something with the eyes, and it trails off on a whole new direction. Sometimes you'll have memories from when you're a child come up. You'll have repressed memories come up. You'll have other stresses that have been coming up. You might be laughing 1 minute and crying the next. So we're not really having to just focus on a specific memory or something like that. The brain doesn't work like that. We don't have one traumatic experience in our life.
It's a basket and they're all in there.
It's a basket, and they're often really interrelated in ways that we don't even know, right? So they're often very complex. So, this is what I love, is this process is really intuitive. I would say we're also, I know a lot of your listeners are, often practicing and spiritual and contemplative practices as well, and they're that way inclined. And I would say that there's something else going on spiritually in this process when you're working with the brain like that and the nervous system. I find it quite a spiritual process to go through. Like, I have had clients have experiences where people have come in their processing and things like that. But at the end of the day, whether or not you align with that, you are doing the work at the nervous system and the brain and the body level.
And how long before someone would see any kind of effects?
I mean, pretty quickly. And it depends what you're working on. I have been working with a client recently that has had an absolute ton of trauma, really, really, really difficult life. And we were working on her mother the other day. And, that same week, she had a lot of somatic symptoms in response to it. And she was having some headaches, and she found herself a little shut down. And she came back the next week, and she was like, wow, that was really powerful work we did last week. And, and then she was like, it was very difficult this last week integrating that, but I was reading more about it, and I know that this is the process I have to go through.
Oh, for sure.
So, I'm not saying that it's going to be a one-stop shop. You usually do have to do multiple sessions, particularly if it's a subject like this person's mother was very abusive to them. She was also an adopted child, so that there's a lot of pre-verbal trauma. That's the thing. Typical therapy, sometimes we don't even have words. This person didn't have words for the trauma that they had as an adopted child, because there's a lot of it.
Prenatal.
It's all prenatal, pre-verbal, right?
Yeah.
So
they're not even aware.
We're accessing a lot of stuff that she can't really even put into words.
She's probably not even aware of it.
She's not. Well, she knows that there's a lot, and a lot of people know that with adopted children or early life trauma, that happens with the mother, there wasn't words for it.
No, a lot of people have trauma from going through the birth canal.
Many people do.
So, right? So this stuff is stuff we can't even begin to process, and most children don't even know if there was problem coming through the birth canal. So it's something you can't identify.
Yeah, that's a big one for people. I actually did a session the other day with somebody, and they were going into process and like kicking as if they were in the womb.
Wow.
And they told me that their mother had told them that she used to hit them when she was pregnant, and she was fighting her mum back. So, some really interesting things come up when we access these parts of ourselves that we can't access just through talking.
Correct. This is part of the whole psychedelic phenomenon.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's so nice. We're so fortunate to have these incredible tools.
We are, and I think more and more people are becoming aware of, the different options they have. And I think different things work for different people, but you still need to take a holistic approach, and you still need to take some sort of body approach, some sort of spiritual approach. In my opinion, we need to be working internally, doing the work internally, and doing the work outside of ourselves. and also connecting with something greater than ourselves to help us make meaning of these experiences.
Yeah, like it's incredible to me how many people aren't aware of the fact that back pains and headaches and certain somatic symptoms are all because of things that we're going through emotionally. It's just they're not aware. So it's really about getting the word out and educating. And on that note, I'd like you to educate me on shadow work, because as I told you earlier, I did a 1-week course at SLN, and we did a lot of Gestalt techniques and what have you. And I left still not really being able to identify what it was. Yes, I know it's the part of ourselves that's in the shadow, but what I'd like to know is, when does it develop? Why does it develop as a protective device? And how do we ultimately extract it, or do we never extract it? We just give it love, or what's the deal with shadow work? Can you get in deep with me?
I sure can get in deep with you, Taylor. Shadow work is definitely a topic I feel passionately about, because I don't think we can heal without meeting these dark parts of ourselves. So Carl Jung, which is my favorite psychotherapist, he was a mystic and just absolutely brilliant and ahead of his time, very connected. He talked a lot about shadow work. And he believed that we were born into this world as our whole authentic selves. And, over time, we experience programming from our families, from society. And we kind of create these different parts of ourselves to survive. And they may be, parts of us that show up as protectors, or parts of ourselves that we shove away because we don't want people to see. Like, you might have an angry part, or you might have this really shameful part, or you might have this part of you that you project and pretend to be in order to protect.
Don't we all have? Aren't we all multifaceted?
We are all multifaceted. But the beautiful thing about what Carl says is that, I'm not sure if you've ever heard this quote. It's one of the most beautiful quotes, and it's the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And, it gives me tingles even talking about that, because I believe that I like to believe that none of us really want to hurt anyone. None of us really want to be in pain, and none of us want to really project pain. I don't believe that comes from a place of actually wanting to do that. I think it's often from a place of protection. And, a lot of us aren't living the most aligned lives because of fear or
pain
or what someone might think of us, right? So, Carl's belief is that we work with these parts by identifying them, by naming them, and then looking at them and integrating them, right? Integrating them. So, I work...
And loving them.
Loving them.
I understand.
And what's really beautiful, as I've been doing a lot of shadow work myself the last few years, is I think shadow work is something that we can do a lot of on our own, but actually it's doing it with people.
That was the Gestalt method that I told you that I attended, that week-long training.
Gestalt is incredible.
So how do we identify it? And give us an example of how you would work with it on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I know, for example, one part that I have been working with personally is anger. And for many years, it wasn't safe for me as a child to be angry at home, and it was something that I ended up learning to suppress. And I think a lot of women do this as well, because it's not pretty for us to be
men
angry.
And women too. Remember, men are large and they have to quash that aspect of themselves. Otherwise, people think they're intimidating and complain at the workplace. So men have learned to really make themselves small.
Definitely. And I think that the interesting thing about anger is it's such a powerful, powerful driver. Anger lets us know when we've been wronged, when our boundaries have been crossed. And it helps us also identify, like if I'm getting angry at someone, I'm like, okay, why is this trigger coming up? What do I think that this was reasonable? Do I think I'm being unreasonable? And sometimes I really look at what's happening in an interaction. And, as I've worked on my anger over time, I've definitely calmed down more because I've just been able to take a pause and look at it. And, they say that you want to take your shadows to tea. You want to sit with them and just be like, okay, what's this about?
So let's go back to anger and unpack this a little bit. Let's hear a step by step of how you would identify the anger and what you would do when you're working with it. How you would take it to tea, so to speak.
Yeah, good question. Okay, so say I've had an interaction with somebody and it's been kind of quite short, or it's just riled something up in me, and I might feel it in my body and have an experience where I'm like, okay, what do I want to do with this? So, often I will just sit for a moment before responding, and, sometimes I would be like, oh, I'm going to pull away straight away, or I'm going to respond hastily. But I often just take a moment to really sit with what's coming up for me. And I look at it, and I look at it lovingly, because sometimes I think people can go into anger and they might act on it and then they immediately go into shame, right? And or it can, if you act on it, you can cause damage to a relationship, or you can cause an issue in that situation. And sometimes just pausing and taking a moment to look at it in a loving way will give you the space to work out how you want to respond from there. So often after that, I will, just really try to identify where it's coming from.
See, I think I do actually understand it. I think it probably doesn't work for me because the whole concept of slowing down when you're in an emotional state and loving that part of you, I just don't know if it's aligned with my personality. I really don't. The triggers come up so quickly when you're in an altered state that it's easy to look at it once it's passed. But in the moment, I just don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why I left that workshop feeling less than satisfied. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way. And it was really interesting. It was taught by Bessel van der Kolk. Do you know who he is?
Yes, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's really brilliant. And he and his wife taught that. And it was absolutely fascinating, but I just don't know that there was any transformation for me.
Well, it's good that you recognize that and you're sharing that. And, what I will say is at the point that I'm having this dysregulation or trigger, depending what's happening, I'm often going and channeling that somewhere. So I might need to do some breath work for a moment, or I might need to go and chant, or I might need to go and exercise and, really take a moment to look at that, right? And there have been times when I have acted on my anger and later on I've just sat with it and I'm like, okay, how am I going to respond now? Because that's the problem. I've seen clients and even myself start to berate themselves for something that's happened in the past, particularly anger. And that is not helping. It is not helping because what you're telling yourself is that part of you is ugly and undeserving and that you are ugly and undeserving.
But that part is ugly. And don't we just have to be pragmatic and call it out?
It can be ugly, right? But that's the thing. The more we call it ugly and undeserving, I think we identify with it and we identify ourselves as being that thing, right? And it is a part of us that we want to integrate lovingly. It's not all of ourselves because we might say, oh, I'm an angry bitch, or, I've got anger problems, or I've got this, right? But really it's a part of you that's coming out as something that has protected you in the past. And, you know, the more that you start to work with
true.
it and have different responses, slowing down, channeling that angry part, working out where it's coming from, going, how do I do better next time?
Yeah, I like the way you said it. You know, it's a part that served you at one point in your life, and that's why it's there. And so if you look at it as something that protected you or something you needed in your past, then I think you're right. Then I think it is fair to say to it, or to say to that part of yourself, look, accept this and let's work with it, because it has served you in the past and it's gotten to where you are. So I do understand that, and I like the way you put it. I guess I think there are probably deeper and more effective ways to handle that part.
Well, I think that there are ways, and I'd love to hear what you think about this.
I think psychedelics are probably a really good way of handling that and seeing it objectively and letting it go.
Yes, but if you're not doing the relational work in your relational experiences to change that, because that's not going to just necessarily change over one experience. You can definitely make work towards that, but you need to also be having these experiences that come up, these triggers that come up, and every single time you see how you respond differently over time.
The growth.
And you see how your triggers actually decrease.
So I would think meditation, I would think chanting, I would think a yoga practice, I would think all those things would serve you well.
Most definitely, but also doing deep trauma work.
So what is shadow work? I mean, I told you how I worked, how we worked it, which was the Gestalt theory.
Well, I mean, it is, as I said, it's doing things to integrate those parts of yourselves that you would usually shut off or hide from people. So it's actually confronting those parts of yourself that you really don't want to see, taking accountability for them, loving them, and then also working out how to work with them in a more helpful way, right? Anger is actually a super powerful emotion.
Yeah.
Super powerful. That's where passion comes from. That's where drive comes from. A lot of the time, people actually move towards something that they want to do because they've been so angry with how the status quo has been, and they channel that as a drive.
As a drive.
Right? And so anger has a really high vibrational frequency if you're using it in a way that you're applying.
Well, you have to turn it into a creative force. If you can take anger and make it creative, then it has a high frequency. If not, it's a very low frequency. It's side by side with fear.
And again, anger itself is not an issue. It's important that we have anger. It's just important that we're not being aggressive with that anger.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That's a real difference. Anger is not an issue. And I think in the spiritual circles, this is a case of spiritual bypass, because anger is an emotion that we all feel to some extent. Many of us shove away because it's seen as unattractive, or, in spiritual circles, we consider it like it's been considered as not love and light, and, you shouldn't really be expressing that. But actually, the way to decrease your anger is to express it in a healthy way. And
very well said.
Healthier and healthier ways, right? And then I don't tend to feel the need to be aggressive. I know that I had one of my issues, and something that I'd worked on for a long time was this feeling of not being seen, and sometimes feeling like a bit passive aggressive about that. And I would say passive aggression was something that I was really working on. And I know where that's coming from. It's actually, if I look at it in a vulnerable space, and sometimes somebody says something and I'm not feeling seen in that moment, instead of saying something, passive aggressive or kind of, quick back, I'll be like, hey, sorry, I really didn't feel seen in that situation. Or I'll take the step to have the vulnerable conversation.
Oh, that's the killer.
And this is what I mean. This is the part of the shadow work, right? It's getting into that vulnerable space where, like, actually I'm responding differently. I'm feeling the anger, but I'm not having an aggression, or I'm not having passive aggression. I'm coming to it with like, hey, I want to have a conversation. Whether that person's able to meet you in that, you know, at the end of the day, this is where the love for yourself comes in, because often, you don't know how they're going to respond. But I always say, you know, as long as I'm trying to do the right thing and I'm trying to work on myself, the universe will support me, right?
For sure. And I think that these emotions like vulnerability, the ones that are really hard to express, are our superpowers. And they're underdeveloped.
They are underdeveloped. And in fact, I often see, you know, it's taken me a long time to view it this way, but I actually see conflict and confrontation as some of the most powerful transformative experiences relationally, right? Because they do, you know, when we're grinding up against people, it's really helping us to find our edges. And I think that more and more people should really be embracing having uncomfortable conversations with people and vulnerable conversations with people, because really, if you want to grow, you need to do that, right? Yep. We need to be having uncomfortable conversations. We need to lovingly hold each other accountable. We need to be so compassionate in that. And I've done so much work around that, and I'm still a work in progress. I always say to my friends, you know, please, if I do something that you don't like, please tell me. I would much prefer my friend to lovingly tell me, or my client. You know, I want my clients to also see me as a human, rather than having a response where they shove that away, they don't say anything, and it builds up, right? So I just believe more and more that we need to be having dialogue. And, you know, this is part of growth. And it's something I think in the spiritual communities, there has been a tendency to shy away from some of these uncomfortable conversations.
I love that you're addressing this, and I think you're completely accurate. And I love the way you frame it. And you've actually changed my mind on a few things while you're here. So that's not easy to do. You know, I'm stubborn. So beautiful. Yeah, really well said.
Thank you.
I think that anger, if looked at as a source of creativity and a driver, it really changed. Again, it's just the verbiage around it.
Yeah.
It's the verbiage around it. So well said. Okay, now healing. Are we capable of total transformation? And it seems like a very long and grueling process. I think I have, but I still have so much to do, as we're talking about, again, sleep. I don't sleep. And I know that means it's clearly anxiety, because I know why I don't sleep. And so what that tells me is there's still a lot of unfinished business. And the work never seems to be done. So no matter how much you grow, there's so much more ahead of you. I don't like that I'm quantifying it. I'm only doing it to myself, saying like, I've come so far, and yet I'm not even close to the finish line. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about how these unresolved issues can often lead to sleep deprivation, and some of the modalities that you think help with sleep. And I was being honest with you earlier, and I said that I had a hard time getting off sleeping pills at one point. And the problem with that is you get off it, and then the anxiety's back because you still haven't healed those underlying wounds. And let's address this, because I know that there's an enormous amount of people that are stuck in the space and either taking sleeping pills or just not sleeping. And those are two horrible choices to have to choose between. Not sleeping or being on sleeping pills, right? Nobody wants to make that decision. So take it away.
This is such a rich topic, and I'm so glad we're talking about it. And I think we can both relate. I think sleep has been my Achilles heel in life. Even as a child, I wasn't a good sleeper. And, you know, I too relied on sleeping medications on and off for my whole life. And, you know, I'm thankful to be in a place now where I'm not sleeping with that. And, you know, I have no judgment for people that do or need to. There's just a lot of compassion, because it's a really challenging thing when we're not sleeping. As you know, our emotional regulation is not there. We're
completely
fatigued.
dysregulated.
It's really hard to find ground during those times. And I do think often sleep is an interesting thing, because from a biochemical perspective, there's often a lot going on with cortisol and other hormones. And that's also the thing that I get frustrated about in the mental health space is, our biochemistry is really important as well. So there's the biochemical aspect, and then there's the trauma. And often what happens when we have trauma or overwhelm or, a lot of stress, whatever you want to call it, that sets off a biochemical response in the body. And, cortisol goes up. We have hormonal changes. If we don't have enough progesterone, we can't sleep. Often if we have high estrogen levels, that will change our sleep as well. Most people, in this Western world have dysregulated cortisol, and that impacts, so basically melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, it responds inversely to cortisol. So if we have high cortisol, that lowers our melatonin. If we can lower our cortisol at night, which it should be low, our melatonin can come up to a place where we can sleep. So, that's just part of the biochemical aspect. But the trauma work as well is really important, or the deeper emotional work is really important. I have had in my life many times just lying awake, just like feeling energies and emotions and things that were just stuck and would not allow me to sleep. So, it is important that we're doing a lot of work in the body, not bypassing these feelings that we have somatically, and also taking care of the biochemistry in the body to allow us to sleep.
In terms of sleep medication, how does one sleep without them if there's just so much anxiety? I mean, one has to address the underlying problem. That can take years.
I believe that, it can take a while. And I think there's also something to be said if you're going through really hard times to take something. I think short term, it is sometimes important to be taking something rather than struggling, but taking something consistently, because sleep is really so important. As you know, it's like the foundation for so much in our body.
Everything.
And, if you are going through a hard time, if I have clients, I can't do the work if they are really underslept, because it might push them too far. But you're right, it can take a long time. I do believe if you're working with a good doctor who can help you from a biochemical aspect, and unfortunately I don't think many medical doctors are really looking at people holistically and considering the hormonal.
It's so hard, though, because our brains, we're all so different. So prescribing medication and finding one that actually works is so difficult, and it can be daunting. It could really be just as challenging as lack of sleep. But what I was really afraid of in those moments when I wasn't sleeping was disease within my body. I was so scared of lower immunity and what was going on while I was, instead of sleeping, I was having anxiety for those 12 hours or 8 hours. And that's when I made the decision that it was going to be better for me to sleep. And I remember the first time I had a sleeping pill, I was so grateful. I felt like I'd found the Holy Grail. Mm-hmm. And life for about 3 months was beautiful until my memory started to go. And you heard it earlier today. I just could not, I had a brain fart. I could not come up with a word. And that started to scare me. Mm-hmm. And I know that these medicines oftentimes lead to dementia. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really scary. So I went off. And I'm back on this sort of dysregulation, anxious during sleep hours. And it's really a complex problem. And I think that many of Americans, many people worldwide are going through it. The faster the world becomes, the faster technology is, the faster our brains are wired, the less capable we are of falling asleep naturally.
Yeah, I mean, sleep is very, very complex, and I agree. It can be really, really challenging. You know, what I would say to people who are having issues with sleep is, you know, with that, start with really basic sleep hygiene, which is frustrating, I know.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that. But sometimes if I have gone through a period of dysregulation, I know it's like the last thing I want to do, but I know that I need to be going to bed at the exact same time, waking up at the exact same time, even if I'm exhausted, getting light on my eyes in the morning. Those are basics. Exercising, even if I don't want to, getting out in nature often.
That's big for me. Yoga, getting out in nature, exercise, meditation, chanting, all that stuff helps regulate, but it still doesn't do the trick. And so it is a very challenging journey I'm on right now.
It is. And I really, really have a lot of compassion for you because I've had this experience many times in my life. You know, I know your audience, and I guess I sometimes think that people in the spiritual spaces, I've seen a lot of patterns with people, and I feel like sometimes there can be a tendency to have a lack of groundedness. Sometimes people can be a bit out there and not always in their body. So there are also grounding meditations and things you can do to call back your energy to your body. So sometimes if I'm not sleeping, I'll literally go up to the couch and I'm getting my energy back in my body. I'm calling it back to my body. Or I'm doing certain energetic practices to clear off energy off me because I pick up energy a lot. And I know that sometimes it can be energetic. So you're right. There are a lot of components to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is really important to be sticking with the basics, but also be looking at the biochemical aspect with somebody that, you know, can really understand the body, and also to be doing deeper trauma work, because if you're going to bed at night and there's all these, you're feeling all of
the
these
anxiety
things
is based
and
on the trauma, right?
and, you know, things that you can't even speak about is kind of are locked in there. That's really, really hard. And if you're you've got a sensitive system where you're feeling all of these things and suddenly you're like, okay, brain, I need to go to bed. Your body's like, well, no, this is all stuck here, right?
Right.
So it can be a really challenging road for people.
In addition, when you're in bed, like your thoughts wander, and they tend to wander on to those things that you don't want to address during the day, or that you're too busy to address during the day. And then, you know, as a manifester, I'm having a thought, and then I'm saying to myself, my head and my mind are totally incohesive. And so I'm having a thought, and my mind is saying, don't have that thought. You're going to manifest it. Stay away from that thought. And so there's this whole dysregulation of, oh, no, I can't say that. I can't think that. What do I do? And then the heart starts to race. And I realize, wow, this is a really vicious cycle. And I need to find my way out. So here's the good news. Like when these kinds of things happen, you realize, oops, there's something I need to work on. There's something I haven't got to yet. So I know that. And that's wonderful. But in the meantime, I'd still like to sleep. I'd like to work on that issue and sleep at the same time. So look, these challenges are there for a reason. Like our body points to where it needs help and where the illness is, right? And so I know that it exists. And now tackling it. But again, it is all energy. It is all trauma. It's just this ball of your nervous system, which needs to be released.
I want to come back to something you said, though. You said, you know, I don't want to have these thoughts because I don't want to be manifesting that. But that stuff needs to come out.
Oh, for sure.
It needs to be coming out, whether you know, I'm
sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I meant, yes, I'd like to release these thoughts, but I don't want to be in bed focusing on that which makes me stressed out, because then I will just bring more of it in. Yeah, that's what I meant.
There's actually a practice that that can be really, really good for this type of stuff, which is an aggressive journaling practice. It's called journal speak. Have you heard of it?
My daughter does it.
Okay. So, I think when it does come to sleep, often there's a lot of extra material going around in our brains.
Oh, for sure.
As we're trying to sleep. And I will tell you, my morning practice, not including exercise, is about an hour and a half, because I do a very solid journaling practice in the morning. Then I'm chanting in the morning and I'm doing other exercises. And, that has helped my sleep so much, because it's allowing for all of that excess crap to be released as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually excess energy that's sitting inside you that is dying to be released. And if you don't have the proper channels to do that, you're stuck with it. And it's just sitting inside you, churning. So I definitely believe that. It might even be better for me to journal in the evening before I go to sleep.
I think journaling in the evening would be good. And with the journal speak, I'll come back to that. It's this aggressive writing practice of really letting out those feelings.
Yeah, tell our audience about that. Yeah. It's been very effective for my daughter.
Yeah. I mean, it's a practice where, you are for 20 minutes a day writing about an experience or experiences that have felt challenging for you. And it might be something in childhood that you want to bring up, or it might be something that's happening during that day or in your life. And, many people that are suffering chronic illnesses, and, I just had a surgery for endometriosis. That's energy that is stuck, that has not been released. We were talking about pains and emotion and how that's often interrelated.
You mean because it's in your creative chakra? Is that why?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I mean, but even most pain or a lot of illness, a lot of people that have had chronic illness have done journal speak, and they've been sick for years, and they've actually found that they've had relief from it, because they're allowing a channel for this energy to come out. And it's okay to have really challenging thoughts and feelings about this life. This life is not easy.
It's not
it
for
is
the faint
not
of heart.
easy. And if you've had a difficult life, if you've had a lot of challenges in life, you can't just sit back and be like, this is great, right? I'm not having. You're going to get triggered by stuff, and you're going to get triggered by stuff a lot. And if you're not doing stuff with those triggers, it's just living inside of you, right? And there's, we can do, and I think meditation and everything's beautiful to calm the mind, but we need to be working with the dirty material.
Yeah.
And I think the beautiful thing about the dirty material is the dirty material becomes the beauty in our life.
Yeah.
Like, we can't have this beautiful light without the dark. And,
It's only beautiful once you've gotten rid of it, though.
It is.
It's not beautiful in the moment.
It's not beautiful in the moment. But I also, I've had a very, very, challenging path myself. I lost my parents quite young. I had a very abusive childhood, and I went through a lot. And I'm so grateful for those experiences. I've come to the point where I've experienced gratitude. It does not mean that I don't still experience a lot of challenge in my life, but I'm experiencing the gold from that, and the wisdom from that, and the joy of being able to help people in that.
And it would be lovely if people could recognize that these hard times are gifts, but in the moment, it's very hard. It's once we've exercised them that it's easier to say, I have so much gratitude for that.
100%. And let me tell you, when people would say that to me, let me tell you, the anger would just boil up, right? Like the resentment. You haven't had the life I've had, and all of these things in your head, and you're going to
Well, it sounds a bit condescending. I know it's not, and I know it's true. Like, I have a son with special needs, and I think of him as the greatest gift and the greatest teacher of my life. But when he was diagnosed, I didn't feel that way, right? Of course. And so it's a hard thing to accept as you're going through it. I've come to the point where, as I'm going through it, I say to myself, turn this into a gift, make this a teaching moment. And it works. I mean, to some degree, I'm still not sleeping, so it's not working 100%. But, you know.
We're going to get you sleeping. We should talk about the Amanita.
Oh, let's talk about the Amanita muscaria.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited to talk about this mushroom because as I was transitioning off some sleep medication, I actually came to discover Amanita muscaria. And I'm not sure if it's muscaria or muscaria, but
I think it's muscaria. I think
can-
it's either, probably. It depends on where you're from.
Either or. So this is an
Just
incredible...
explain, this is the well-characterized mushroom with the red cap and the white polka dots that most people know from Alice in Wonderland.
Or
but now
Mario
it's
Kart.
really?
It's the Mario Kart mushroom.
Is
Yeah,
it?
Yeah. So,
oh, that's hysterical. I had no idea.
Yeah. So just for listeners out there, this is a highly poisonous mushroom. So don't just go picking it.
It's also psychoactive.
Very, very psychoactive.
There are rumors that this is the story of Santa Claus is traced back to this in Siberia.
Yeah. I've heard. Well, I mean, this mushroom is actually being used by shamans in Siberia to access different dream states and sleep states and for healing. So the belief is that you're actually also doing work as you sleep. So, you know, there's different ways to prepare it. And in California, it's actually legal. Where I'm from in Australia, it's not. So I went home, you know, earlier in the year or last year and I couldn't access it, which was a bit frustrating, even though it's everywhere. It's in a lot of places, I think in the States and in Europe and also in Australia. But it's legal here. And what's really interesting about it is, unlike psilocybin, so psilocybin works on the serotonergic system, whereas Amanita works on the GABA system. So it's really calming on the brain. It's also really good for addiction as well, or people that have a lot of dopamine driving behaviors. And I used this mushroom as a tea every night for about a year. And it helped me through a really stressful period in my life where actually I did need some help getting to sleep and just working through this until I was able to decrease the stress in my life and I was able to do more of the work that I needed to do. And I didn't want to be anymore using consistently sleep medications. For me, it was really hard on my body. And I think for a lot of people it is. And, you know, also no judgment to people that do need to use it. But, you know, the Amanita was a real godsend. And, you know, you can prepare it as a tea. It's a very specific way. It's a mushroom that's becoming more well-known.
More popularized.
And more popularized. But the amount that you take isn't very psychoactive for bed. You don't need a lot. And you just sleep through the night and have beautiful dreams. I actually had a dear friend, she visited from Australia, and that's a 17-hour time difference, right? So I'd prepared her some to come over. And she doesn't have sleep issues, but she hasn't dreamed in about 4 or 5 years. She's a banker, so she is working in a high-stress environment. And she had the Amanita for the first time, and she was like, wow, I had the most vivid dreams, and I haven't dreamed in years. So it actually like woke up something in her subconscious that she'd obviously like wiped out. So, you know, it's a really, I'd highly encourage people to look into it.
How do they look into it? Are there websites that talk about this?
It's still not as well talked about. There are definitely books. I can see if I can find a link and we could link up.
We'll link it to the podcast. That would be great.
Link it to the podcast. I did a lot of exploration talking with suppliers and things, and there are a lot in California. And, you know, reading about it and then using it for myself and my clients.
As I said, they sell it now at like the Conscious Life Expo and a lot of these wellness and spiritual, I know you love that word, conferences. So it's out there, but has to be used carefully because it does have toxicity levels. So one has to just be careful and know what they're doing.
Definitely. I mean, the amount that you'd be using for sleep is very minor. I think 2 to 3 grams diluted in water. So that sounds, like a lot, but it's very different when it's being diluted because you're actually removing the mushroom itself and you've just got like the tea that it's made from that. So I often make a batch and I'll use that over a certain period. But yeah, it's a really fantastic alternative for people that are looking for something that's not a medication.
I have to say, you are a wealth of information, and I really like the way your mind works. They really do. You've helped me reframe things, which is such a powerful thing to be able to do because you're literally changing people's minds for the better. It's really like instant growth.
Oh,
thank you. How do people find you or connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me. I'm just doing my website now. So they can find me at www.juliahassall.com.
Spell that last name for us.
Hassall. So 2 A's, 2 S's, and 2 L's. And I also have my Instagram, so that's Jules_Hassall, Hassall. And, I'll be doing a lot more speaking and podcasts. I'm now, as I said, I want to spread as much information as I can to people. I'm working in different communities and workplaces and things like that to just give people more tools and information to empower themselves on their journey.
I'm really grateful. This turned out to be a great podcast. Thank you, Gyanran Dave. Where did you meet him? At a farmer's market?
I met him at a farmer's market. I actually, I had dropped food on myself multiple times, and it was one of those moments where you hope no one's looking at you.
He was just staring at you. He was watching the whole thing go down.
And I said something. I was so embarrassed. I was like, Mercury retrograde, which makes no sense whatsoever.
But he got it. He jumped on that.
And he goes, oh, you're in the right audience. And I was like, oh my gosh, great. And I looked at myself. I had like turmeric all over my white jumper. Oh, that's a sweater jumper. And we just got to talking and I just couldn't stop talking. I think we ended up chatting for like an hour and, I'm so passionate about this space and so is he. I just think there's so much information and, we wanted to be able to share it. And then he talked about you and I listened to some of your podcasts and I love the way that you interview and I love how you share parts of yourself vulnerably and you're also just really matter of fact in the way that you talk and also open-minded. So, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
New friends. Okay, thank you so much and we want to have you back.
Thank you. I would love to be back.
Bye, Julia.
Bye.